So welcome everyone, bienvenue. My name is Jeff Pelletier. This is Audrée Lafrenière. I'm sure you guys know us from the film. So we are going to run through some questions that we already have on Instagram. We're of course going to answer your questions here in the live chat. So feel free at any time to post those questions. And we're going to do this in, we're going to try to translate most of the questions, at least from French. We're going to respond both in French and then in English. But in the interest of time, the English questions we aren't going to translate. We're just going to answer those in English. I'll do my best to answer in French, but likely I'll answer in English and then have Audrey translate my responses. Alors, on va répondre en français pour les questions en français et puis traduire en anglais. Mais les questions en anglais, on va seulement répondre en anglais. On ne va pas traduire en français. Okay, so let's jump into a couple of these questions from Instagram first, just to get us started. And then again, feel free guys to post away here. And of course, we are talking about the Quebec Mega Trail. This was a 100-mile race in Quebec, starting in Baie-Saint-Paul and running back to Mont-Saint-Anne that we ran, what was it, 4 weeks ago now? 4.5 weeks?
Yeah, that was already a month ago, yeah.
A month ago. We published the film about 2 weeks ago. It was a really long documentary. And for those of you who watched it, of course, you would have seen that Audrey won. She placed first female and 14th overall. Yeah. You can see her nice little prize back there. We had a question from, I think it's Mickey. How many hours do we train per week? And I guess how many hours did we train leading up to this race would be another way to phrase that. Why don't you start?
Sure. I mean, it's, you know, it's a matter of multiple months. Obviously, we didn't train just for a few weeks leading to the race. So I'd say like we started early in the spring, and even before that over the winter months, like we always do like some base training over the winter and then kind of ramp it up in the spring. But I'd say like early summer or like mid-May is when we started really focusing on trail running primarily and started adding workouts as well, and doing back-to-back long runs on the weekends. And so yeah, it adds up to quite a few hours a week. I'd say like minimum 15 and sometimes up to 25 hours a week even. It certainly feels like a part-time job at times, like at the peak of our training. Of course, when our long runs are like full day adventures, essentially, like, when we're spending 7, 8, 9, even up to 12, 13 hours a day on the trails in the mountains at the peak of it. So, yeah.
Yeah, same for me. So I came into the season, actually, this year was a little different. I did not come into the season with base fitness because I tore my hamstring back in the end of November of 2020. So I had a lot of work to do in December and January as far as physio and rehab. And then February is when I finally started running again and ramping my volume up. And I was doing a lot of strength training. So for me this season, it was all about strength training to try to not only rehab and kind of recondition my hamstring, but try to come back stronger. So my spring was all about strength training as I built up my volume. And then finally by early summer, I was back up to, full volume, full speed. So a little bit different for me this year. Normally I would have come in with a little bit more of that base fitness. But yeah, this year I did a lot more strength training twice per week. I was working with a trainer one-on-one. And then, yeah, something around 25 hours per week of actual running volume as well at full capacity. Okay, let's look at another question here. So,
hi, Moni, from MD. Et bonjour aux Québécois aussi qui se sont joints à nous dans les dernières minutes. Je commence à voir sur le chat beaucoup de noms québécois. Ça fait plaisir que vous soyez là.
So as far as Raphael's question here, what percentage did the humidity play into the difficulty of the course? And what do you think?
I mean, it's a difficult thing to quantify. It's hard to put like a number on it. I would think and I can only answer personally. I know everyone felt it, and it obviously affected some runners more than others. For me, like, it definitely slowed me down, like, a lot. I certainly felt like I was, you just have that heaviness constantly. That's kind of dragging you down. Like, I never felt like I was very springy. Like, I felt good, and I'm sure, like, it shows in the video. Like, I'm very positive, and I constantly state that I feel good, I'm in a good mood, I'm happy, like, no major pain points, but certainly, like, it did slow me down. It just felt, like I said, like, just like heavy. I felt like I was just sweating a lot more than I normally would. So I was kind of watching for dehydration. And again, that's not something that we are used to deal with out here on the West Coast. And so it felt like I didn't know, like, should I drink like a lot more, just a little bit more? Am I drinking too much? Like, am I essentially just diluting all my electrolytes? So it certainly did slow me down. I don't think I would have done like a much faster time without it, or even if it was a bit lower. But I think, like, for sure, I think like a little bit faster. But it's really hard to quantify how much, because I've never done that course in any other circumstances, so or any other conditions. So yeah.
I would say it affected me probably more, I think. I felt pretty bad. I just felt like I didn't have legs, despite the fact that my training went so well, and I came into it feeling like I was going to nail the climbs. And then when I was on the climbs, I just couldn't seem to push it. My heart rate would get up. I would all of a sudden just have to stop. And, I just wasn't thermal regulating the way I'm used to, the way I usually can. And especially in a drier heat, I usually can handle the heat quite well. So I think it really affected me. My target time, I mean, I hadn't run the race before, of course, and this was the first year, so we weren't able to benchmark off of previous years, but I was expecting to run closer to 24 or 25 hours, and I was over 28. So I think that probably affected me at least by 10, 15% as far as my finishing time.
Yeah, I think we tried to go off the times of the 110K course and add the unknown section to it. So that was difficult to predict, but we were certainly both like a few hours slower. I definitely was hoping or planning to be closer to 28 and maybe even under. So I was just over 30. So maybe I think with better conditions or easier, cooler climate, it'd be easy to shave off a couple hours. The other thing is, it's not just the physical part, I think, but there's just a lot, like a few more things to manage in those type of conditions, like what you're wearing or the chafing, managing those things, like you're changing your socks more frequently, maybe, things like that, right? And again, the fact that you're sweating a lot more than usual. So
yeah, then when you're drinking more, it screws up your sort of nutrition plan a little bit as well. It complicates things. So it's not a matter of just drinking more. Sometimes you do just have to slow down. My recovery, though, I mentioned this in the film, kind of, I felt like was going to go better, and did go better. I raced again this weekend, and I felt pretty fresh because my legs, I didn't push my legs as much at Quebec as I would have liked to, because I just couldn't, because my body just wouldn't allow it. So I do know that I really know based on my recovery that I had legs. I could have pushed a lot harder had it not been for the humidity. And as far as how to if we could do it again, I think the only thing would be to have trained in humid conditions and to have prepared for that, heat training, but specifically humidity. And that would have been difficult for us without having gone. I know at least a few runners I talked to had weeks, and I think they fared much better as a result. Here, logistics around filming during the race. What equipment did we use? Okay, so let's talk filming. So my cameras are over there. I grabbed them, but basically we filmed all this during the race on GoPros, as we always do. So I had the GoPro Hero 9, and Audrey had the 8. We both had a couple of extra batteries, and we shoot on just a little selfie stick, just a little handle, and I personally just stick it in my pocket. It's become very second nature for me to film my races, and Audrey's been practicing as well on some of our training runs. Yeah,
that was certainly like something new for me. Like Jeff just said, we've practiced this summer like over a few training runs, and so I was trying to get used to having it in my hand or like keeping it in a pocket that's accessible, but also that was not too uncomfortable in my pack, because there's certainly a couple places where I thought it would make sense, and in India, and it was just like rubbing or like poking me in the ribs, or like I try to get it out and it just gets caught onto something. So it took, like, it seems like a simple thing, but it took a little bit of trial and error to figure out what worked best. And even still during the race, for sure, I have a few regrets, like some scenes, some places where I didn't film, where I really wish that I did have footage of what happened. But I mean, that's all part of the learning. And in the end, yeah, like I said, I didn't film as much as I would have liked, just because I got into race at some point, and that became the priority, and I kind of forgot a little bit about filming. And in the end, Jeff did a really, really good job with the limited footage that I gave him, I think. So kudos to him for that. But yeah, that was a fun thing to do. And like I said, I think I've learned from it. And if we were to do it again, I would definitely film more and become a little bit more efficient with it as well. The fact I love running with poles, and that was the biggest thing, is for me, like as soon as there's a climb or even in the descents, like I really, really rely on my poles. I find I'm a lot more agile running downhill with poles on technical terrain. So like there was all those opportunities where it would have made for some good footage, but then I'm using both of my hands, like, so maybe I need a chest mount next time or something.
Yeah, that is kind of the toughest part, is balancing the camera. When I film holding the camera and I'm not using my poles, I'm definitely working harder. But yes, it's less about the logistics and more about remembering to film or forcing yourself to film in those tough times. And I think the thing that, something maybe we have a chance to talk about tonight are some of the things that Audrey didn't film and that we didn't include in the documentary. Yeah. It wasn't all, rainbows and unicorns.
Yeah, I mostly filmed in the good moments. That's for sure.
And the problem with adventure filmmaking is, if you didn't film it, it didn't happen. It's hard to tell a story in a voiceover. So there were definitely some things that, I think Audrey suffered a little bit more than she let on. And unfortunately, it was just hard to tell that part of the story. So, but there were some sections I know where I just found out about it this last week when we were casually talking about it. I'm like, well, why didn't you film that part? So yeah, that's definitely the most challenging part about filming a race, is filming the race. It's not really the gear itself. Okay, so there's a question here. Yeah, Jean-François, here's a question for you, Audrey.
Stay focused while running at night. It must have felt pretty lonely to lead the pack out there. Yes and no. It did get lonely, but not during the first night. The second one, for sure, when the pack was really spread out. The first night, though, really, really flew by, as I find it often does, because you're fresh. You just started the race, like finally, right? There's a lot of excitement, and everybody's close together. Like the first 6 kilometers, I was like deep in conversation with actually another woman and her partner. So like right away in the first night, I talked to so many people, met so many people already. A lot of them, I do remember their names. I remember where they're from. Like I remember our conversations very vividly. So I find that just really, really helps. Just talk to people. But again, something that I do mention in the documentary is that how much like I really do enjoy running at night. Like it's not something I do in training anymore. In fact, I don't think I ever have. Or like, I don't go on random night runs just for fun, but maybe I should. But I don't know, like when I do get to do it during a race, I actually really enjoy it. Like there's something really exciting about being out there in the dark, where there's really not much else going on than just what's visible because of your headlamp, right? So that's all you have to worry about, like where you're going to put your feet in the next 10 steps and who's around you, and just one step at a time through the night. So actually that part was quite fun. And the second night it did get lonely, but again, I think at that point it's not so much that it was nighttime, it's more that I was tired. Like 24 hours into the race, just going into the second night and knowing that I still had like quite a few hours to go. Like I wasn't nearly done when the sun set for the second time. So yeah, that part did get a little bit lonely and a little bit sleepy for sure. Like mostly my vision started to go, when everything seems blurry, or like like the grass looked like a lot longer than it actually was, and just little things like that where your mind start playing tricks on you. And again, I found that as soon as I was able to catch up, or they caught me, I can't remember, a runner and his pacer caught up to me, I think, at one of the aid stations. And then from then on, I just kind of stuck with them just because, and we weren't even chatting that much, but a little bit, and some sharing some laughs and just hearing them two talk together, it just like kept my mind occupied, and it just helped me getting through the second night without feeling too lonely.
Okay, let's answer. Here's a question from Sam. So what was the thing that you guys enjoyed the most during the race? Why don't you start with this one?
What did I enjoy the most? Well, for me, for sure, this time was having my family there as a support crew. That was something completely new. The other long races I've done, either Jeff was there as my crew and support, or I had no one at all. So that was a very, very nice thing to have my family there, and just looking forward to seeing them at the aid stations. Having my parents' crew for me, that was, yeah, for sure a highlight for me this year. Trying
to think. I liked the challenge of speaking French. I think I faked my way through the entire race speaking French, and I had a few people say, you have kind of a funny accent, but they didn't necessarily know that I was from BC right away. And I really liked the Mont Saint Anne part. I loved summiting and getting views. We were in the trees for a lot of it, and they're beautiful forests, but I also like views. And so I was really excited to get up on top of the mountain, and we had a beautiful evening up there.
Yeah, it was nice to finally get out of the trees for a little bit there. Yeah.
Audrey, what was your key workout leading up into the race? Raphael asks.
Yeah, honestly, I think so. This summer, I did a lot more hill workouts than I normally do. I mean, I always do hills during a big build, but normally I would alternate between like actual speed work on like a flat road or a flat trail and hill workouts. And this summer has been all hill workouts. I've done absolutely no speed work. I definitely felt like it paid off. Like it made my legs like really, really strong. And I did feel strong on the climbs and on the descents. So that was great. I'd say one that stands out, it was like a 45 minutes uphill tempo. And it is as brutal as it sounds, but literally it was like done on like a runnable grade, but steep enough that you're doing a tempo, but it's the tempo effort, so you're definitely not like full tempo pace as you would on the flat road. But I found that was like really good. It was like quite challenging, and the fact that it was so long, right, 45 minutes, one single interval, it just really forces you to first like be smart and pace yourself so that you can finish the workout at the pace you start. But also it just teaches you, I think, patience and of course, endurance. So I actually really like that one. We did it twice, I think. And then a third time, like just a slightly different variation. And I really enjoyed doing that. Well, not at the time, afterwards.
Eric, thank you so much for the super chat, for the $10 donation. That's great. Let's get right to your question here. What's your strategy for transition training from marathon to ultras? One long run every week or back to back? Yeah. So I started as a marathoner, and I guess you did too. We both started on the road. And with the marathon, you generally are doing one long run, maybe a 3-hour run as your longest run. And as soon as you go to ultra, it's back-to-back runs. So usually you do maybe a 3-hour and a 2-hour, or a 6-hour and a 4-hour Saturday and Sunday. The idea being that the second long run isn't usually quite as long, but feels even longer because you're doing it on tired legs. So definitely that's the biggest change that I noticed in transitioning to ultra, was the back-to-back. Now your entire weekend is just basically dedicated to running. And that definitely only increases the longer the distance. So when you get to 100 milers, you're still doing back-to-back, but they're much longer. They're maybe 8 hours and 6 hours. And when I was training for my 200 milers, Tour des Géants and Swiss Peaks, I actually then did back-to-backs. So I would go out on a Friday, maybe at lunchtime, and I'd run for 4 to 6 hours. Then I would do my big, maybe 8 hours on Saturday. Again, now I'm on tired legs. And then I would go again on Sunday for 6 to 8 hours. Maybe a key workout during the week and a couple maintenance runs. So the idea is you're just always tired, cumulative fatigue. And those long runs then feel like 20-hour runs, even though they're 6 to 8 hours. So that definitely, the longer the race, your runs don't necessarily increase, but the frequency of your long runs do. You end up doing more volume.
Il y avait une question en français, quelqu'un qui veut savoir comment on s'est rencontrés. Someone wants to know how we met, and we can quickly go over that. En fait, on s'est rencontrés à une course amicale qui avait lieu dans une allée derrière une pizzeria. C'était organisé par Canada Running Series at the time. Et puis, voilà, Jeff était là, il faisait un documentaire, il filmait, il était là avec sa grosse Steadicam. Et puis moi, dans ce temps-là, je travaillais pour New Balance Canada comme représentante. Donc, j'étais là avec une fleet de demo shoes pour les faire essayer aux participants. Puis, c'est ça, on s'est rencontrés là, on a partagé une pizza après la course. Puis, c'est ça, on s'est rendu compte qu'on avait quelques amis communs, puis surtout une passion pour la course en commun. Mais c'était à l'époque où je faisais seulement de la course sur route. J'avais fait quelques trail races, mais juste court, genre 10-15 km. Puis je m'entraînais pour le marathon de Boston à cette époque-là. Puis Jeff était instructeur pour une trail running clinic. Puis il m'a demandé si je voulais m'inscrire. Mais j'ai dit non, ça va, je m'entraîne pour Boston, ça m'intéresse pas de faire des ultras. Et puis voilà, 6 ans plus tard, je cours des 100 000.
So we met technically working. I was filming a video for Canada Run Series about a run crew challenge that they were putting on. And so we were out for one of the run crew's runs at a pizzeria was where they were starting and finishing. And Audrey was there with the New Balance shoe fleet because she was the New Balance rep at the time. And so that's where we met. I had my camera and she was letting people try on shoes. And then we shared a pizza and the rest is history. And she was training for the Boston Marathon at the time. And I got convinced her to come out to my trail running clinic, even though she wasn't super interested in trail running at the time. And then, yeah,
how that's changed.
The rest is history. She hasn't run another road race since. No. So, Bob asked if we have any interest in Western States or Hard Rock. I mean, yeah, definitely. Western States, I'm not really thinking about it because I just don't have enough tickets. I would love to run it, but I'm not focused on it. But Hard Rock, 100%. That's my goal. Sooner the better. I mean, in the next couple of years, I would love to run Hard Rock. I would move down there for a month and train on course. I would give it my all. I love the course. I love Colorado. I love altitude. I love training and racing in altitude. And so, yeah, Hard Rock is definitely my focus. I think I've been applying like 6 years in a row, so I'm getting closer. But it's a lottery for those who don't know. It's very difficult to get into. I probably have like a 5% chance at this point. So who knows how many more years it'll take me. But 100% Hard Rock's on my radar. It's my focus.
You'll get in by the time you're 50.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's for sure on my radar as well. Only the past 2 years, I just started actually having tickets for Western States. And I think, sure, I would love to do Hard Rock, but I find it quite intimidating because of the altitude. I really haven't spent much time training or running at altitude, and I think that would be very difficult. And I don't know, the course just looks scary with the thunderstorms and just how remote it is. So I don't know. I think Western States is a little bit more of a focus for me. I think also that course suits my style a little bit better, more runnable, flowier. So yeah, I think for sure, for the two of us, either one, whoever gets in first, we're both going to be all into either race or support or pace or crew or yeah.
Laureen asked if my hamstring bothered me. No, it didn't during Quebec. And I had done a 100-kilometer training run in June here on our local trails, the Vancouver 100. I have a video about that as well. And that was kind of my big test to see, can I run an ultra, 100 kilometers without any hamstring pain? And I had none. And fortunately, I haven't had an inkling of pain since the spring. So I'm officially 100%, if not 115%, because I've been doing so much strength training. And I'm super committed for that reason now to strength training, not only to keep up that strength in the hamstring, but to avoid further injuries of other muscles and soft tissue and things. So yeah, 100%. The strength training is what got me through this season and continues to get me through, because I raced a 50K on the weekend and I have another big race coming up. So yeah, I just turned 40, and I think the older we get, the more important strength training becomes.
Looks like Brian Lambert wants to know what we thought of the Mustachibo on the course. It was a surprise. We had been warned that it was technical and difficult, and that you can't really fight it. It's like, it is what it is. It's slow going, and you can fight it and try to push and go fast and probably hurt yourself, or you can just kind of take it easy and not slow down too much. But it was for sure a surprise how technical it was. But it was fun. Like personally, I did enjoy it. I thought it was pretty. And then at that part in the day also, I was running like yo-yoing with Renee, the second place female, and she had done it before, so she was actually like giving me tips, and like she was able to point out like how far the next aid station was and things like that. So we were chatting and going back and forth. So that section for me anyways was actually quite fun.
I was in a particularly low point. I was not having fun, but I do remember making a mental note that would have been a really fun trail on fresh legs with some friends. Like that's the kind of trail I would love to do, is just a training run when I'm not,
because it would have been fun
100 kilometers in and dying with the humidity.
And also it would have been fun to take your time and go jump in the river and like enjoy it a little bit, and then come back.
So super fun trail. Maybe not quite as fun to race on though. I don't know. Okay, let's see here. So what should you adapt your training and mental prep? This is Jean-François. To attack your first 100K. Yeah. So when you're jumping up to the 100K from the 50K distance, it kind of depends, first of all, on the race. If it's a slower 100K, I mean, some 100Ks are very slow, some are much faster. So it's sort of in that gray zone, because of course some 50Ks are slower as well. You're going to be out there a lot longer, but it's still a day. You're not running overnight usually, like a 100-miler. So really it's, as far as your training goes, I think those back-to-back long runs are even more important. Training on tired legs, because you are going to be that much more tired. Really, I think nailing your nutrition as well, and having a good nutrition plan, because your margin of error, the longer you go, the less of a margin you have. And then I think just pacing yourself with 100K. It's crazy to think this, but like the first 50K is a warm-up. And then the next sort of 20K is when you start to kind of layer it on. And then that last sort of 30K or so is the real race. So really you need to get to that 50K point feeling pretty fresh.
Yeah.
And so put your mind back at the end of that last 50K you just ran and how tired you were, and try to think, what would you have done differently had you been trying to get to that finish line feeling fresh? And that's how you should be pacing it. And again, your training just, it's just that much more important to have that volume on those long runs.
Il y a une question en français de Marjolaine. Combien de jours prenez-vous pour récupérer? Est-ce que vous arrêtez complètement? So she wants to know how many days we take to recover, and if we stop completely, or what's our strategy around that. And pour ma part, oui, je prends minimum une journée complète de repos par semaine. Habituellement, le lundi, on fait rien du tout, on mange sans cesse. Puis ça, c'est quand on est en plein entraînement pendant l'été. Et puis, sinon, c'est pas rare que je prends peut-être même une deuxième journée complètement de repos complètement le vendredi, ou juste d'activité très, très, très légère en préparation pour peut-être un plus gros week-end. Donc, ouais, une journée minimum complètement off, peut-être même 2, dépendamment de ce qu'on fait pendant la fin de semaine. Et puis oui, on fait aussi des semaines, des down week, des semaines de récupération, où est-ce que vraiment là, on drop notre millage de presque près de moitié. Donc, si on fait, par exemple, des semaines de 100-110 km en montagne, normalement pendant une semaine de build, on drop près à 50 km ou moins pour une semaine, et puis pas d'entraînement haute intensité, là, vraiment juste des courses très, très, très faciles, très relax. Donc, on garde un petit peu de volume, mais diminue beaucoup l'intensité.
Et après une course, on prend une semaine?
Ouais, et puis après, ça dépend. C'est ça. Ça dépend la durée de la course. Par exemple, ici, après le QMT, j'ai pris 2 semaines complètement off. J'ai couru 0-0-0. Faut dire que j'avais les pieds très, très, très maganés cette année. C'est pas toujours le cas, mais encore là, je pense que l'humidité, ça a vraiment pas aidé mes pieds. Donc, j'ai pris un bon 2 semaines sans courir. Puis là, je fais encore des semaines. Je fais à peine 40 km par semaine. Jeff était capable de reprendre son millage plus rapidement. Mais moi, je prends ça très, très, très relax pour le reste de la saison.
So after, or rather, the question was, how much time do we take off, if any, in our training? And we both follow the same strategy, which is to take 1 day off each week minimum, sometimes 2. It just happens to usually be on a Monday, so after a back-to-back weekend. And it's not just to let your legs rest, it's also to let your glycogen stores replenish. So it's all the other physiological stuff that's happening in your body, not just your legs. And after a race, we'll usually take a good week, maybe even 2. Audrey took 2 weeks off after this one. I actually was back to running a little bit quicker this time. I think I only took a few days, even not quite even a week, but usually a couple of weeks after a big race. Okay, so as far as getting to my first 50K, Sheldon asked how long did it take of steady running to get there? So I ran 3 seasons of marathons before doing my first ultra in my 4th season, my 4th year. So really it took me, 3.5 years before I ran my first ultra. I hadn't really heard of ultra marathons before. So, and then it kind of ramped up from there. But even that, I did a few 50Ks before doing my first 50 miler. And then I did 100K. And then finally I did my first 100 miler. So I had done, I did sort of iterate myself to the longer distances. I think, there's no reason you can't jump up or do an ultra right out the gate, but there's something to be said for learning those little mistakes along the way early. So blister management, nutrition, and also to give your body time to adapt. It takes years for the tendons and ligaments to sort of toughen up. And, think of your running as a career, not as a season, and sort of set longer term goals. And I think you'll have more longer term success as well.
There's a question here about polls again and how Français.
I just jumped down.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. Thinks it might be a bit counterproductive. And I think we both agree with that, actually. I think it's just a matter of like training with them a lot and practicing those skills. They can be very beneficial. Like they literally can take loads off of your knees while running downhill if you're using them properly and if you're used to it. But we both agree that if you don't run with them often, they will end up probably slowing you down, or like you mentioned in your question, like you're wasting energy trying to use your arms if you're not proficient with them, for sure.
Grace, just to answer your question about progressing from the marathon to ultras and from road to trail. So I did kind of touch on that, but I would just say I think there's a huge benefit in getting a coach. And you don't necessarily need one-on-one coaching, but having somebody design a training program for you. I'd recommend looking at Ridgeline Athletics First 50K program. And that's Gary Robbins and Eric Carter. And I've trained with Eric for years. And of course, I'm good friends with Gary Robbins. And I believe they have a 50K, a first 50K program. 50K, yeah. And then, and it for pretty cheap too. And then if you want, you can then hire them to train you one-on-one. But I definitely would say work with a coach if you can afford it. And then as far as road to trail, I think the best way to get involved with trail running is to join a group. And obviously during COVID, that's difficult, but find a community. That's the best way, because there's a lot of stuff around safety, and not getting lost in the trails, what gear to bring. It's just best to do that in a group, and you'll be much more motivated. So 100%, I would say find a clinic, find a group, somebody you can learn with. Okay, so let's jump through here. So using poles can consume more energy. It's true.
Eric, 3 back-to-back, OK. C'est juste si tu t'en rends pour un 200 000. C'est pour le 100 000, back-to-back, c'est suffisant.
Brian's wondering, when will we do another race together? We both want to do UTMB, and we're thinking of both trying to get in next year. We had both signed up for Val d'Aran in Spain 2 years ago, I guess. Yeah.
That was for 2020.
So we were going to race that together, and then it got postponed to 2021, and it still wasn't clear that we'd be able to travel there. So we backed out of the race. That would have got us automatic entry into UTMB. So we would have not only ran that race together, we would have run UTMB together as well. So I think that'll be the next race that we do together. Likely.
So fingers crossed that we both get in this year. Otherwise, I don't know, we'll find something else. We'll have a plan B. We always figure, find something. But it is, the plan is to do some more.
Which is easier, a marathon or a 50K? And can I skip the marathon? Now, I did already kind of touch on that. I personally, okay, so first of all, neither is easier. It depends on your goal. What's easier to finish? Well, I mean, the shorter the race, the easier it is to finish if that's your goal. Less can go wrong. And you could walk either of those races in, but you could walk a marathon much easier. Now, perform really well and run a fast marathon, that can be harder than doing a 50. You might need to do more speed work. I always use the example of running a fast 10K is harder for me than running a moderately fast 50K.
Yeah, I would agree.
It's just different kind of training, track work and things.
Yeah.
But having said that, the longer you go, the harder it is on your body. And I do think there's something about taking time to build up your mileage. And I also think there's a benefit in trail runners doing the odd road race or even starting on the road, because you learn to pace and you learn to do all these different things in a more controlled environment. And you can really apply those lessons later on once you hit the trails. Okay, so thanks for all the kind words as well, guys. We appreciate it. I'm just skipping through some of them.
You were from the Netherlands. That's cool.
What else are weekends for? Yeah, mostly just training. Yeah, I sleep in during the week.
Ultra Dad wants to know if we plan to race in the US anytime soon. And I mean, the short answer is no, because they won't let us in. Or they will, but it's
then we have to quarantine when we get
complicated
back,
for now. So I guess I will say, I mean, there's so many fun races that we love in the States, just across the border in Washington State, or even in near Portland. I've done many like 50Ks and 50 milers in those states, in that area. And we really enjoy it. So hopefully, maybe in the spring, because I also always find that there's a lot of early season races there, and then it kind of sets you up nicely for the rest of your season. So hopefully in the spring.
Hopefully once the border opens up. We both used to run a lot of James Varner's races, Rain Shadow Running.
Yeah,
that's a really great series. There's a bunch. There's a bunch of great races down there. So, Cascade Crest is a 100-miler I really enjoyed. All my 100-milers have been, aside from Fat Dog, have been in the States. So yeah, we're looking forward to getting back down there as soon as the borders open up again.
Yeah. And also, honestly, we like to go for training sometimes. It's a nice change from the Vancouver trails. We've had many like fun weekends just doing adventure runs there along I'm thinking about like the Lewitt Trail around Mount St. Helens, which was like a super fun weekend. So, and I'd personally love to do the Wonderland Trail. Jeff has run it with his buddy Adam a few years ago as a fast pack, and I would love to go down and do that with some girlfriends as well. So hopefully,
Patrice is wondering, how destroyed are we after a race? What are the pains that you feel the day after? How do you recuperate? I'll quickly start it, then Audrey can talk about QMT. Now, I felt pretty good after Quebec. Like I said, I felt like I kind of had to hold back, so my legs felt better. But the main thing, especially after a 100-miler, is you just have this deep fatigue where you think, oh, I feel pretty good. And you go out for a run, and 20 minutes in, it just hits you like a wave. And you're like, oh, I just feel like crap. And it's this deep fatigue that takes weeks to get over. And so it's important not to rush back, or at least to know it's there and just keep things easy. The longer the race, the worse that is. A 200-miler, that fatigue lasts for months. And it's there and it hits you again. 2 months later, you'll be out for a run and you get an hour and a half in and it just hits you. So there's things that are happening on a hormonal level and things.
Even cellular level. Yeah. And your nervous system is still fatigued.
So the longer the race, the more that is. I find the shorter the race, the more it's like a musculoskeletal thing, like your ligaments, because you're running faster typically. So I think the faster it is, the more it's kind of just aches and pains. The longer it is, the more it's like a deeper fatigue. So having said that, though, you did have some specific pains after QMT.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I always do, and it's always something different. So I'm lucky in a way that I don't have like one or two things that are persistent, that are always there. It's always something different, and it's more like a niggle. Like it never goes into like full blown injury, but it's annoying enough. Like right now, I have a bit of a hip flexor issue that's preventing me from really getting back into running a lot. And actually that's funny because again, that's one thing I didn't mention at all in the video, but that started happening at about 50K, like pretty early on in the race. Like my left hip flexor, like every step, like I would just lift my knee up and I would just feel like this sharp pulling pain in my hip flexor. And I was like, oh God, it's so early to start feeling things like this, but it is what it is. It never went away, but it also never really got worse. So I just kind of kept on going, and it was okay. But then the few days following the race, and you can see in the video when I get up on the stage, actually the next morning, like I can barely lift my left leg.
Yeah,
it's because of that. Like it was like really painful with every step, and that's been dragging on now for a while. I've had like a few sessions with my RMT, and it's been very helpful, and a lot of rest, and I've been spending a lot of time on my bike instead of running on the trails. So just letting it time to heal, and stretching and foam rolling and whatnot. And also one thing actually though that is pretty typical for me after I've done other races like that were not that distance, but that were longer time on feet. And it's always my heels. So my Achilles get really, really sore, like tender, like to the touch, almost feels like it's bruised, like just like major inflammation, and it just takes months to go away, unfortunately, and still now. So it's been, like we said earlier, like more than a month now since the race, and I can walk completely pain-free, but as soon as I put shoes on, it just rubs on my Achilles, and it hurts, and it's just kind of annoying. And again, I can run, like the pain is there, but it's not like preventing me from running. It's just like annoying.
I tend to get tight hips. I don't usually get foot problems at all. I don't usually get blisters. I think I'm a light runner. The exception is in the 200 milers. I get nerve damage in my toes, to be honest. You lose feeling in your toes. So Tour des Géants, for example, was in September, and most people do get this. It's just from the hammering, after days and days of hammering. And they call them Christmas toes, because usually you get the feeling back by Christmas. So that's definitely something to look forward to if you ever want to toe the line at 100 miler.
Yeah, both my big toes are completely numb still, and yeah, that's just a little bit of nerve damage. And I've tried like different shoes, and it still kind of keeps happening, but it's not painful. It's just kind of a weird feeling.
Sheldon's wondering, at what distance does nutrition become a larger factor in the overall fitness? I think that the longer the distance, the more, I've said this in some of my videos, the more it becomes an eating contest. But having said that, the fitness is still important, but the fitness will make or break your race as well, but it becomes like table stakes. And then the next thing you need to have mastered is nutrition. So, you've done all the training, you go out and you do a race, but if you don't stay on top of your nutrition, you're done. Halfway through, you're just going to start falling apart, and it's really hard to keep up with that. Whereas I think, like, say you go out too hard because you didn't pace yourself well, as long as you stayed on top of your nutrition, you can probably still finish the race.
Still keep moving.
Yeah, I think nutrition, the longer the race, the more important it is, because the harder it is to get back on top of that. So I'd say past the 50-kilometer mark, when you get to the 100-kilometer mark,
yeah, when you get into the 50 miles, 80K and up, I would say so as well.
Because it's more like when you get into like over 10 hours, it starts to become like you really have to have stayed on top of your nutrition. And if your stomach turns and you can't eat, it's kind of a downward spiral from there.
Very important question. Eric wants to know what's in the glass.
Oh yeah.
We are drinking Juxtapose Wild IPA from a very local Four Winds Brewing. Highly recommend. It's really, really good.
But we're drinking it in Dieu du Ciel glasses. So Quebec Brewery.
These are our favorite glasses.
Not Quebec beer. How runnable would you say the course is? I'm from Calgary, looking at maybe doing the 110K.
Not very runnable.
Not very runnable at all. 30%. No, I don't know. It's the last 40. There was about 35 kilometers out of the last 45K that were very runnable, because we were on cross country trails, and I was loving life at that point because it had cooled down. I felt like I had brand new legs, and I was able to run and pass a few people.
I would say
but
also,
up until that, not much.
Well, the section before Sentier des Caps, before the halfway point, like the whole Sentier des Caps, I would say was also very runnable. So there was a big chunk there too.
It's sort of a relative thing too, right? But I would say overall QMT is more technical than most races. It's definitely on the more technical side of things. So if that's something you don't enjoy, be warned. If it's something you like, that you enjoy, you want that challenge, then it's definitely your race. What's the best mountain running pack? Well, I think it depends. I mean, I'm a Solomon guy. I think Solomon makes the best packs as far as their way they've innovated over the years. But having said that, they are fairly expensive. You pay for a lot of that innovation, that research, but you also pay for the quality.
I think they're on par with most brands these days. Like
as far as price, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
I would say start with Solomon and see what fits you, what has the features you're looking for. Black Diamond's another good brand as far as if you're looking for something more for mountain, where you need like an ice axe holder and things.
Yeah.
I think for racing though, Solomon's where it's at. The pockets, the way it's designed for racing. It's designed for speed and efficiency, less so than long, like, self-supported mountain things.
Yeah, and
whereas like Arc'teryx and Black Diamond, for example, are more like for self-supported adventures.
Definitely less geared towards racing.
Yeah.
But yeah, Salomon, one thing they do well is that they have a lot of variety. Like they'll have a lot of options, and also like they've been making packs like this for years. But yeah, like Black Diamond makes some really good packs that a lot of our friends run with. And I would say though, for adventure runs, for like self-supported stuff, I personally really like my Ultimate Direction one for fast packing. So another brand to consider for sure.
Brian asks, Moab 240 or Bigfoot 200? Yes, I plan to take a couple of years off from 200. It's now been a couple of years because of COVID. That went quickly. Damn, I should have said a few years. But no, I think my plan was to, I'd love to go back and do Tour des Géants again one day, but I also wanted to try out a faster, so to speak, like a more runnable 200 miler in the States. The two that I did in the Alps were, you're hiking up and down massive peaks the whole time. So the finishing times reflect that. Looking at the average finishing times at Moab and Bigfoot, it does seem like it's more of a shuffle. You're shuffling for a few days, and I would love to do that as well. I can shuffle with the best of them. Turn your brain off. So yeah, I think I would do probably either one of those. I think Moab is the one that I would do probably first, just to see what I can do as far as, again, a local race where I could have friends and crew and, all that kind of stuff out there. So yeah, just a question of when. Probably not 2022, maybe 2023. I would do it.
And we assumed this question was for Jeff.
Sorry, I just assumed.
Maybe people want to know if I want to run 200 miler as well, and the answer is no.
Well, you want to do Tour des Géants.
At least I say that now. Yeah, I don't really have any interest in running Moab or Bigfoot. No offense to those courses. I'm sure it's fun, but I would love to run Tour des Géants for sure. Like I've run Tadret, the short course, a few years ago in 2018, and I absolutely loved it. It almost killed me. It was so hard, and that was my first experience at such a distance. And we're in the Italian Alps, and I'm completely alone. Anyways, that's a whole other story. But I loved it, and so yeah. Since I've done that race, it's in the back of my mind all the time that it's only a matter of time until I do the full 200 mile along around the Alps. And again, I think that appeals to me just because I love being in those kinds of mountains so much. So yeah, for sure, I want to go ahead and do that. But
and I think I'd owe a pacing duty after her pacing me for 5 days.
Crewing?
Sorry, crewing.
Yeah, we're not allowed pacers,
no pacers,
but Jeff would crew me because yes, I did crew for him at Swiss Peaks for 5 days straight, and that was
an ultra in itself. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sean, poutine is definitely considered carbo loading and recovery.
No, it's recovery only. Jeff thinks it's carb loading. I think it's for after. Before, no.
Okay, so tips on Squamish 50. Well, first of all, I would say, Bruno, that Squamish 50, it's going to be a fast year because usually that's a hot and humid race as well. And
usually it's hot and humid, or it's the trails get very, very dry, and then you run on loose sand and it's dusty, or sometimes some season there's even been forest fire, so there's a bit of smoke in the air. So I think this year actually having it in October is ideal.
Normally it's in August, right? Or mid-August.
Mid-August.
So it's the hottest week, and it's humid in the forest, which it's usually not that humid out in Vancouver or Squamish, but it usually is for that race somehow. So I think to answer your question directly though, how to deal with the muddy conditions. I mean, first of all, use some shoes with good traction. I would use my Salomon S-Lab soft grounds, for example.
It will be slippery.
It will be slippery
and wet, but also in some places, I think it will be nice and tacky, and the trails will be really good.
Fingers crossed it's not too muddy, that it's just sort of a little bit tacky and a little bit wet. A little bit of water helps the trails in those situations. And
Jeff will be away traveling, but I'll be at Squamish 50 hanging out all weekend. So definitely do come say hi if you see me at the finish line of the Salomon tent.
And Bob, just to clarify, yeah, so it's not that we can't go to the States. It's that when we come back, we'd have to quarantine, at least the last time I checked. So we can travel to the States. It's just difficult when we come back. It makes it hard to justify going for a weekend if we have to come back and quarantine for a week or two. Do leg cramps become more prevalent, and how do you manage them? So I've never had cramps in a race, but I think I also tend to stay on top of my electrolytes a little bit better. Having said that, it's worth just saying the science is still out there as far as whether electrolytes cause cramps or what causes cramps. I mean, is it undertraining? Is it pushing too hard beyond your training? Is it just electrolytes? They actually don't know.
Is it even like a nutrient deficiency? Like, I think sometimes it has nothing to do with the running or the race itself, but more like in your day-to-day life, what's going on. But we're both pretty lucky that we don't really deal with that sort of issues on the regular basis. At the QMT, though, I did have cramps in my toes, which I had never experienced before. And that happened pretty early on. And yeah, I think it's because I was drinking so much water. And then I took a salt pill, and that went away, and that didn't come back. So I think in my case, at least this time, it did help. But that is not something I deal with.
No, it's not something I deal with. But I would say I think it's related to electrolytes, just that a lot of people they debate it. I personally just don't see a harm in taking some salt. If you take too much, you can get an upset stomach. But taking, say, one salt pill for every liter or two of water you drink just seems like like a good plan as a sort of default for your salt intake.
Eastern States in Pennsylvania. Yeah, I've heard of Eastern States, actually, that race, 100 mile. I think Jeff never wants to run a humid race again.
I did say that, yeah. Maybe Hurt 100, maybe, because I've just had it on my list for so long. But I decided I'm not a huge fan of humidity. I like a drier heat. I'll run in the desert before I run in a humid environment again.
There's a UTMB question. Yeah. If you have the points, how many years does it take to get into, say, CCC, TDS, or
I think UTMB is a lot faster. Like
it's easier than hard
I don't
rock
know. You have like a 25% chance, maybe, or even
more than that.
Maybe even 50%. Whereas hard rock, you're talking a fraction of a percent your first time applying.
Exactly. Yeah. So much easier. Much easier, and especially like the shorter distances one, CCC and TDS. Like I got in TDS the first time I applied, which was awesome. I mean, I got lucky. I know not everyone gets in the first try, but TDS at that time, anyways, you had like a upwards of 70% chance of getting in. I think as long as you have the points.
UTMB is, to say it like it is, it's it's a business. So you can buy your way into UTMB essentially by running the right races, and they want it to be that way. Whereas Hard Rock is very much not that way. It's more of an old boys club, for better or for worse, but it's not, it's a nonprofit. But it's definitely harder to get into. But again, UTMB, they structure it so you have to kind of spend the money to get in, unfortunately. Okay. Yeah. Town to town hopping in the Alps. It would be awesome for fast packing.
Thank you to everyone who agrees with me that poutine is for recovery only.
Okay, let's see. Any races around New Zealand? There was, maybe if anybody else has any ideas for races in New Zealand, there was one that I thought was
Tawamera or something.
Yeah, that might be it.
Money Monroe, if you're still with us, tell us.
Chime in there and let us know, because
I believe he offered pacing and crewing duties if we ever wanted to run there. So.
Michael asked, do you feel you had enough rest after QMT for your latest 50K? Yeah, I felt great this weekend. So I ran a race called it was
Beaver Flat.
Prairie Sky Running is the organization. It was called the Beaver Flat 50K in Saskatchewan. And there was nothing flat about it. I don't know why they call it Beaver Flat. There was 2,200 meters of climbing, which is, 8,000 feet maybe. Quite a bit for a 50-kilometer race. It was fairly runnable, but it was in like a river valley, and you're going up and down these sort of valleys on these ridges. And I kind of treated it as a training run, sort of a tune-up to get some volume back in my legs, because I have a staged race coming up in October. And so I went up pretty conservatively, and by about 30 kilometers, I checked in with myself, and I thought, I feel pretty good. So I started ticking people off, and by 40K, I felt better than I did at 20K. And that's when I was really able to start kind of running it in. Having said that, it was really hot again. My summer just won't end. It got up to like 32 degrees Celsius.
Meanwhile, it was 12 degrees here in Vancouver.
Yeah, but there was no humidity. It was windy, but it was a challenge because I was just drinking liters and liters of water, and my electrolytes got a little bit off balance, and I didn't feel great. That was because of the heat, but my legs felt pretty good and I felt rested. I felt surprisingly rested. I finished fourth. So I did fairly well, and I never really had to dig deep. I just kind of ran it in, and I was filming the whole time. So yeah, I would say I was pretty well rested. And I think that again is where I didn't get a chance to leave it all out there in Quebec because of the humidity. So I had the legs still for it, and 4 weeks had passed. I had done a 35-kilometer long run in the meantime, in between that. Other than that, I was kind of taking it easy.
Yeah, I think the only concern you had going in is that, you were recovering, and then you didn't really have time to get much training in, where maybe normally for 50K, like we would try to integrate some kind of speed work, having a little bit of a bit of
more pep in your step,
faster gear, which in this case you didn't have time to do. But considering all that, like you did really well. And like you said, that definitely has to do with all the training that you put in the summer.
Yeah, I felt good. And I think that was the strength training as well. It came back, and just that strength training, there is that foundation now. Yeah. Andrew, thanks for joining the channel as a supporting member. That's awesome. Transalpine Run. Yeah, I've heard of that one. I think, yeah, that one's on my list.
Stage race.
Yeah. That is the one. Yeah, that's Transalp that we were talking about. WAM 60K. Yeah. Yes. So you know what? It's too bad because unfortunately WAM is not on the original course this year. It's been rerouted. So I actually don't know.
I'm sure he knows.
Yeah, but I actually don't know though exactly what the new course is. So I don't know how to answer that as far as how technical the trails are. But I think my understanding of it is that you're going to be mostly on some of the mountain bike trails, which are beautiful and flowy and fun. Probably not super technical though.
I don't know. I would expect some technical descents at least, because some of those mountain bike trails are really, really tricky.
That's true. Yeah. Sorry, I don't have a great answer for you on that one.
But again, we'll be there. So come say hi.
We will be there. So come and say hi. Yeah. Okay, let's see. How do you train or change your training during the late fall, winter, and early spring months when there's snow? Yeah, that's a huge challenge for us here on the West Coast, or in BC, I should say.
Where we can't get to the Alpine because there's too much snow, and it's like essentially like very dangerous conditions.
It's snowing now. There was a race called the Frosty Mountain 50K on the weekend, and I saw friends posted photos. It was already snowing, which was early. So yeah, it's a challenge. We end up running lower down on lower trails, and it's hard to get vert. The beauty of living where we live is that we train by accident. We just go out and have adventures and get a couple thousand meters of climbing in just by accident. Like it's more about the summit than it is about trying to, we're not doing hill repeats because we need to, we might do hill repeats as part of a workout, but the volume just comes naturally. The elevation comes naturally. In the winter, it's tougher. It's raining, it's cold, and we can't go above the snow line. And that's one of the reasons why I think both of us, we typically don't do early races. We do races that are like June, July at the earliest, preferably September.
And even that is early.
Yeah, that's even early, because if we're racing in September, that means we can do the bulk of our training in June, July, and into August. So we both have taken up ski touring the last few years, and ski touring allows us to enjoy the snow instead of fighting it and still get volume. Ski touring is basically walking up a mountain. You put special skins on the bottom of your skis and then skiing down, long days. It's very much simulates ultra running. It's not as hard on your body, which is a good thing. It allows your muscles to recover a little bit. It's non-impact, and yet it's time on feet. And so it allows you to transition much, much faster into your running season. Look at Kilian Jornet. He'll come off the skis and go into running with 1 week of training and win a race because he has the volume throughout the winter. So that's really our new strategy. Yeah,
it's really a good way to keep up the fitness and enjoy winter, and just like a great way to essentially be in mountains year round, as opposed to just being confined to like the lower trails where there is no snow. So
Terraware 100. There we go. Is a treadmill like a Nordic track worth the investment for training in winter? I mean, I think it depends on your goal. The only thing I would say,
depends also where you live, I think.
Yeah, sorry, and where you live. The only thing I would say about a treadmill, it's probably worth it, yes, but remember that you can train for the uphill on a treadmill, but not the downhill. And most races with hills, like Tour des Géants, for example, it's the downhills that get you. It's the eccentric loading on your quads. So while you can do a lot of your training on a treadmill, in a lot of cases, you still need to somehow get out in the mountains to get that eccentric stuff. Strength training can help, but nothing simulates running down a mountain for an hour, like running down a mountain for an hour. So yeah.
I personally, though, I've been known to enjoy the occasional treadmill workout for sure. I don't know about that one specifically that you asked about, but I think there's something. It has its place, especially over the winter months where you just want like a quick and dirty, efficient workout. I think it's a great way to do it.
Yeah. Okay, let's see here.
Look up the Y 100 miler. Oh, okay. Thank you. We'll look up that one. Never heard of it.
What are your thoughts on the video coverage of races like UTMB? Wave to the Future. Yeah, I'm really excited about the coverage in the last, in the last year and a half or so. Well, I guess really it's the last 6 months. So Cocodona 250, I think, set the bar pretty high for coverage. First of all, it's a new 250 miler down in the States, put on by I forget the company, Jamil Curry's race organization, and they had live drone footage and just really cool stuff. Western states tried to step it up this year, but I think they had some poor coverage, cell coverage, that is, poor cell reception. But they did, they stepped it up in some ways, but they kind of failed a little bit on the live footage from the course. But UTMB was just incredible. I'm really excited to see where it'll go from here. And I think, one of the reasons why ultra running's not in the Olympics is because it's not spectator friendly. They need advertisers and they need viewers. So maybe one day we'll see more, whether it's the Olympics or not
just being in the Olympics, but having getting
more mass appeal, more recognition when you can actually sit back and watch, especially with drone footage, live drone footage. It's just incredible, right? So I'm super excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, those races are always fun to follow along with, especially those people that are racing it. But for sure, like the coverage now, like being what it is even more exciting for sure. We went out for drinks at our friends and neighbors during UTMB, and they had it on the big TV on YouTube, just as a background thing for the whole night, and I thought that was super cool. Yeah. Okay, that's so far. That's all the questions. Yeah, Aravipa, thank you. That's Jamil's company. Let me just pull up the other couple questions we had here before we wrap up on Instagram. Okay, so what did we both learn from the race, if anything? I learned the importance of training for humidity if you're going to run a humid course. I think that's probably training for the conditions.
Training for the conditions.
But again, we didn't know that it was going to be so.
We didn't know it was going to be humid. The day before, let me think about this. Was it a few days before? It was like cool, and then a few days later, am I remember that correctly? It was just a window that was humid.
No, I was there for 2.5 weeks, and it was hot and humid.
It was humid the whole time. Okay, I'm misremembering that. Yeah. It's my race on the weekend that was like 18 degrees, 32, and then 16 degrees the next day. Yeah. So that was my lesson, was the humidity. If I ever was to do that course again or a race like that, I would need to sauna train or something. I don't know, do some hot yoga maybe.
Yeah, and I think for me, it was to not underestimate the advantage of having a crew. Again, I think I've gotten used to doing really long races without it. And now that I know how much of a difference it can make, I think I never want to go without it again. So yeah, I'll be recruiting for crews and pacers maybe. I've never done a race with a pacer yet. So that's something I experiment with sometime.
Yeah, the races in Europe, in the Alps, typically don't have pacers, mostly because you don't need them for safety reasons, because the trail. So it's just the style there is that you're kind of on your own. The field are typically too, you're out there with thousands of runners instead of dozens. So yeah, Audrey is mostly only racing in Europe so far. Raphael clarified here, the Nordic track actually can do a decline of 6%. So that actually might be a good investment then. Yeah. That's really the thing you're missing typically on a treadmill. Yeah. What kind of strength training, Daniel on Instagram has asked, do we do to prepare the body for ultras? I would say actually, we did a video on this recently. It's on my channel, and it features Audrey, and we talk a little bit about strength training at home when you're just getting started strength training. There's some key movement patterns you want to master. But something I do emphasize in that video is at some point you kind of need to work with a trainer because you need to make sure you're not developing bad habits. You don't need to work one-on-one like I do, but just getting a program and maybe checking in with that trainer once every few months even, and investing a little bit in that.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I did. Like I enjoy working out by myself a bit more than Jeff does, I guess. So what I did is I would see the trainer like once, and then I'd do like a few sessions in the coming weeks by myself, which I really enjoyed. And I would go again and do another session with him. So we integrate like new movements and things like that, and see how things are going and change the routine up a little bit. But I'd say like if you're just starting, like it really doesn't have to be complicated. Like just master like some basic movements, body weight exercises mostly, and like functional stuff. But even like I say functional, but it really doesn't have to be super specific, at least when you start. I think, like Jeff said, like that's where like having a personal trainer really comes in handy. Yeah,
things like squats, deadlifts, but doing it with body weight when you first start off will ensure that you don't hurt yourself right off the bat.
Yeah, but yeah, during the winter, we both do it minimum twice a week, like full 60-minute sessions. And then in the summer, I lowered it to once a week only during like the big build months, because I felt like enough with, working full time and training 20 hours a week. I could only fit one quality strength session a week. And I found that was okay just to maintain over the summer.
Well, why don't we wrap it up there? We're just over an hour. So thanks everyone for joining. And for our French friends, pour nos amis français, je vais ajouter les sous-titres en français dans quelques semaines, peut-être. Alors, stay tuned for that.
But I'm sure everyone on here has already watched it in English anyway.
Yeah, so we're adding French subtitles, is what I was saying there. So in case you know anyone who doesn't speak English, you can then send them that film. Hopefully those will be up in a couple of weeks. So thanks, everyone, and hope you enjoy your evening.
Cheers.
Cheers.